Hello there, beautiful dear soul ones across the planet. Thank you for joining me in this video where I wish to share with you about my conscious conception story, my journey, my experience. And just before starting this video, I was trying to think, where do I actually start with this story? And my conscious conception story starts starts at a level of me being unconscious. So about approximately 7 years or so ago, I stopped taking the anti-conception pill. I stopped taking that, and I was taking the strongest, a very, very strong one for 10 years called Diana 35, which I later researched, and various women actually have died from taking it for 10 years. I think it was in France where they banned it. At least that's what I found on the internet. And so I was very happy that I was stopping taking this, and I only started taking it as a young teenager because my father basically told me to, you know. It wasn't much of a choice. I mean, of course I had a choice, but at that time I didn't dare to say no to my dad, who was very angry that I had lost my virginity. So yes, nor did I know any of the bad effects of that pill at that time. I just kind of did what I was told. So about 7 years ago, I felt that I didn't want to take it anymore. I wanted to clear my body, and I was changing a lot of things in my life at that time. And it took about 2 years for my whole body to come back into sync, you know, to synchronize, to clear it all out. That's what I felt. And around that time, I also got initiated into Reiki and became a Reiki teacher or master, as they call it. And from that moment, I was always giving myself Reiki sessions every night. And I would always spend either a lot of time on the womb, and if I only had a short period of time, I would only do the womb. And I would have done that for at least 4 plus years. I did it, and it just naturally happened. My hands would always go to my womb space, and every night, you know, as I was falling asleep, I would Reiki my womb. And at that time, now looking back, I see I was unconsciously preparing for this birth that had taken place about a year ago, that I had given to my son. I was unconsciously preparing for the possibility for having this child. And what else happened during that time? Let's see. So that was kind of the preparation that I unconsciously did in my womb space. And then even before that, I feel to mention, before that, I always had a deep sense of knowing, and this may sound a bit strange, but I had a deep sense of knowing that I couldn't get pregnant. And there was just like a no around my womb. And when I was doing my shamanic training, meaning universe source put me into an experience of reawakening my shamanic self from this lifetime and many other lifetimes. During that time, I was with the Yanacona tribe from Colombia, and the Taitas, or the shamans. At that time, I was basically the main, apprentice. Yeah. And well, if you are they take ayahuasca in their trips, and at that time I was doing ayahuasca as well, and now not anymore. far from that. But for me, it was a reawakening of many lifetimes of being a shaman, and I had actually locked a part of me, a soul part of me, and a soul memory and experience within the ayahuasca trip and reawakening experience journey that I had there, if that makes sense. Anyway, the point being is that during that time when I was in one of the ayahuasca journeys, the plant told me that I will not get my period for the next extended time because I have work to do. And I didn't really understand at the time what that meant. And for about, I'm not sure how long it went on, but approximately 6 months, I didn't get my period. And it made sense after, because you are not allowed to go on ayahuasca journeys if you have your period. And so I was working with these shamans, and I was their apprentice and working with all the people who were journeying. And if I kept on having my period, I wouldn't have been able to go on all of these journeys. So it made so much sense. And then there was a moment. There was a moment that universe told me to not go to this certain ceremony. And there was a strong no in my mind. No, no, no. And I was heading to the boat, to the shamans. We were in Mexico now, because we were also traveling, Colombia, Mexico. We were flying to Tampico, another place in Mexico. And there was a strong voice saying, no, don't go. And then they were like, what do you mean? You're not going to go this last moment? That how could you do that? That's not right. No, you can't do it. And so I allowed myself to be persuaded to go, but I knew of my soul being that I shouldn't go, but I kind of felt like this misplaced, that I had to, but I didn't. And I didn't choose to not go. And what happened as soon as we arrived in Tampico? I got my period. And so that was interesting. And then my period just came back, and eventually that journey and experience and story of my life was over, and I moved on to something else. So I just felt to add that because I think that's kind of interesting and relevant. And it talks about, how we have the power of our womb. We can say yes and no. And so carrying on, let's move it along. So I did all this womb preparation, and then as the anti-conception pill was working out of my body, I started to really get in sync with my menstruation, for the first time, and really know it. And when I was younger, I used to get a 7-day menstruation. That's why I didn't like it. And that's why I took the anti-conception pill, because I could skip a few months by just swallowing that pill further. And I didn't want to be 7 days, out of the month, have my period. That's 3 months a year. That's a lot. But as I got synchronized with my period and with my womb, I noticed that my menstruation started to be less, and it started to be only 3 or 4 days. And it wasn't so heavy anymore. And it was easier. And then later, as I synchronized my womb with the phases of the moon, and just with my whole awareness and consciousness and inner, brought it into a spiritual concept with myself, I noticed that doing menstruation ceremonies and really taking those days out for myself and doing certain ritual ceremony with my moon, I could bring my moon or my menstruation down to 1 day. So I would only have my menstruation for 1 or 1.5 days. And that I did for a long period of time until I got pregnant. So that's another thing. And I could also talk to my moon cycle and say, hey, can we skip a week because I need to do this? Or can we do a few days later? And I really I was able to conversate with my menstruation and make it my friend, and she was my friend. And I really would love to share a lot about menstruation and moon cycles, and how that's one of the most spiritually connected moments of the month for a woman, where we're able to really connect deeply during that time. And I'd love to talk about that further, but moving along, we're talking about conscious conception. So let's see. So about 4+ years, roundabout, before I actually conceived, I had a vision that of my 2 children. There were 2 children, they were blonde, and my partner at the time was South American and dark, and he had that vision too at the same time. He was a shaman, and he said, "Oh, I saw our family," and I was kind of in shock, and but I knew that it wasn't our children because they were blonde, but I didn't tell him that. So that was the first time I met my possible future children, right? And even before that, my whole life, I had gone to different palm readers or different seers or mediums, and I had been told by various people that I could choose whether I have children or not in this lifetime. I was like, oh, that sounds appealing, because at that time, with all of my childhood trauma and stuff, I didn't want to ever have children. And and so I could choose if I had children or not. And if I have children, I would have 2. It would be a girl and a boy. And I could choose to have 3 if I wanted, and if so, the third could be a girl or a boy. So I have the choice to have children, and then the choice to have 2 or 3. So that was also really interesting, and I got told that multiple times, just got affirmated multiple times from different mediums. And so let's see, about approximately 4 months before I conceived, but through a channeling, I received the question from my higher self and higher sources, the question if I wanted to have children. And in that channeling, they showed me who these children were going to be and what they were going to bring in the world. And I was so blown away by who they are and who they will be and will become. It was a girl and a boy, so it's always a boy that's older, and it was a girl that's shorter and looks a few years younger, maybe 2 or 3 years younger. And I was always blown away by, their souls, and that they chose me as their porthole. What an honor. And that my higher self and my higher sources are asking me to porthole these children in this plane of existence. And I remember I was crying when I received this question and all this information, and I was overwhelmed, and I was frightened as well, because I already, since a very young child, I said I don't ever want to have children, like if I would ever have children, I would adopt, but I will never have children, and I don't want children, and I just want to be a free soul and do my thing, right? And which has a lot to do with my upbringing and past, which makes a lot of sense. But at that moment, I was so overwhelmed by the beauty of this question, and I said yes. How could, if these souls want to come here, my higher self and higher sources are asking this of me, there was no part of me that could say no. How could I say no? So I said yes. And the message that came through was, okay, well, I got a healing, a very, very strong womb healing, and I was crying, and I could feel it all over my body. It was, very deep etheric healing. And then I got told to do a certain ritual on Mother Gaia, where I connect to the Divine Feminine, Divine Masculine, and I basically accept this. And they said, you know this from other lifetimes, how to do this. It's a very old practice and ritual. And I was like, okay. And it took about, I think, a week or 2 weeks for me to, probably 2 weeks to absorb what was asked of me before I went and did this ritual. And I was in Thailand at the time, and so I went to this park and then sat in this very beautiful place on Mother Gaia, and I did said ritual. And I was told to do this ritual as many times as I intuitively feel necessary. And so I did it then. And then I think maybe a week or so later, I did it one more time. With when I was on my menstruation, I did it another time, second time. And it was set. And I was like, okay. And the timeline that I received initially was that I would have at least a year before I would conceive, a year. And I was like, okay, I got a year, a year is good. And what I received was the Lionsgate portal next year. And I wasn't sure if I would conceive on the Lionsgate portal, or that he would birth on a Lionsgate portal, or that I would find out I was pregnant on the Lionsgate portal. I wasn't sure exactly, but Lionsgate portal, that was set. I was like, okay. So I got about a year. Great. A year to get my life together, my routine together, some money, set the foundation, prepare my body, mind, and soul for it. And that timeline collapsed. And a few months later, I got pregnant. And that specific day that I got pregnant, a specific day was in November 7th, if I remember correctly, November 7th, and the moon was in Scorpio, all about the genitalia and sexuality in the air. And it was in the morning, and I made love to my partner at the father of my son, and we made love, and I was transported out of my body. It was we were in Thailand, and for me, I was transported in a time that we were both king and queen in a very ancient time in a castle, and very much Viking essence to it, but also very Arthurian, from King Arthur in that time. My connection with this man is that we have been in past lifetimes during both of those times, so it's very interesting. And so during the whole sexual experience, I wasn't even in the here and the now. I was there, and then we had finished, and I remember going to the toilet to take my pee, and I just I was like, oh, I think I got pregnant. Was a thought in my head, which I've never had in my whole entire life. I've had sex quite a few times, and I've never thought, I think I just got pregnant. And I thought that, and I didn't say anything. I was just like, oh. And later when me and the father of my child, we spoke about this, he told me that after having sex that morning, he also thought, ooh, I think I may have gotten her pregnant, and he didn't tell me either, which was very interesting. And he also went into that other dimension with me while we were having sexual relations. And that other dimension I've had multiple times, having sex and then going into past life or simultaneous lifetimes journeys while having sexual experiences. That's nothing too new for me, but there's this deep feeling of this is right, this is here. I wasn't like, whoa, I just had this wild experience. I was just like, this is exactly right, this is exactly perfect, it just was so natural, just in and out of it. And very graceful and beautiful. And that was my conscious conception, almost fully conscious, but conscious conception story in my unique manner. We will all have different experiences with it. And there was something else I wanted to share. Let me just look at my notes. No, I think that was it. So And then after the conception, and I found out that I was pregnant, my children, no, excuse me, just going back into my memory. After I had the channeling a few months before I conceived, I was seeing my children all the time. With my mind's eye, and they were in the house. During the day I would see them running around the house. I would see them at night, at the nighttime when going to sleep, and I kept seeing them more and more. And closer to the time of conception and after conception, I saw them more clearly. So first they were just two children. They were blonde and they were yay high, and how I saw them was about around the age of 2, 3, 4, 5. And as time went by and the more I saw them, the more I got to see them. I started to see their face. I started to see their I started to see their face. I started to see their character, how they act. I started to really see them more fully, and not just like these, a girl and a boy, but really see their character more and more so. And after conception, I saw them every day, every night. So that was really, really strong. And I suppose the rest of the story goes into my conscious pregnancy video and experience that I will share. And as I'm talking, I just remember that the father of our child, he clearly saw the face of our child when he was on that trip with us. And I think it was before conceiving, if I remember right. He doesn't really meditate. He doesn't do all of those things, or he didn't at that time, not really. And he just got into meditation for a couple of weeks or so, and he saw what looked like our child's face. And because he had my nose and he had features of both of us, and he was really blown away from that, because he had never really seen anything in meditation and stuff. So that was pretty interesting and potent too. And the last thing I wanted to add was when I received the question, do you want to have children? We have children, and I was told that I was already mating with potential fathers. I had already been mating with potential fathers, and that there are a few potential fathers. I think there were 3 potential fathers as my option at that moment in time. And so in my story, in my experience, the father was a potential option, but I was deciding to have the children, and it wasn't a per se contract with that per se father to be, and that was still being moved around. I was still being moved around, who the father would be. And so in my experience, I thought I had a whole year to prepare, at least for pregnancy and all of this stuff. And then poof, a few months later, bam, conceived, and I was pregnant. And I was really surprised. And it took me a moment to accept and realize, okay, that timeline broke. First I was like, oh no, I did something wrong. That timeline broke, and it all sped up. And my higher sources, they said, if a timeline like this speeds up, it's only of a good thing. It's only a good thing. And then I calmed down a little bit, and accepted what was, and then took it from there. So I think that's all for this video. Thank you for watching and receiving me. This is just my story, and I would love to hear your story if you want to share a little bit. Or leave a comment, and I send you so much love to your day. Thank you so much for receiving me. Many blessings to you. Bye now.